Hello my precious little dragons, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Callista and I make videos about books and sometimes beauty. And today we are continuing my favorite thing to film on this channel, which is book looks. I review a book that I've read, and while I review the book, I create a makeup look inspired by it. Today I am going to be reviewing the new release called Madam by Phoebe. This book takes place in 1992 in a private all-girls boarding school in Scotland. It is highly isolated and is called Calvin Gray Hall. Our main character, Rose, is the first new hire at the school in over a decade. Her predecessor left under mysterious circumstances, and she slowly starts to unravel the weird happenings at the school and realize that not everything is as prestigious and above board as it seems. So this is sort of a dark academia thriller. I would classify it more as an adult novel than a young adult. So I'm going full 90s today. I got my like scrunchy end, half up, half down. My hair was bigger, but it's the end of the day and I'm just now getting to filming because I'm lazy.
It's fine, really, it's fine.
I'm going to go ahead and get started with my makeup. Fun fact. In the beginning of the book, Rose describes her lipstick as her war paint. So I'm leaning heavily into the 90s makeup trends, just so you know. I'm going to be using, you know, that heavy burgundy lip. I'm going to be using the pencil thin eyebrows, except I'm not actually using a pencil. I already did my vampy sort of nail polish, you know. And she does describe like her favorite tweed jacket. I don't own a tweed jacket, but I have one that's like bright pink and blue in a tweed-esque sort of style, so I may throw that on at the end. We'll see. It's kind of hot, so I may not. Ideally, I feel like I'd have like, you know, like the turtleneck with the tweed jacket, like look totally academic, but it's summer and I'm not about to do that, so what have you. Non-spoilers about Madam. I kind of have mixed thoughts on the book. Granted, thrillers aren't my favorite genre, but I do like dark academia, and I like that, you know, dark academia sort of by its nature is supposed to both celebrate and challenge a lot of classical academia, like sort of tropes or happenings or just standards, I guess. So you could really tell that this author was coming at this from a very sort of feminist perspective, which I liked. There was a few things that were kind of that I didn't feel were handled quite as well, and we'll get into this a little bit later because it is kind of spoilery, but it's kind of weird because it's a thing I really liked, except when I didn't. The book is split into a couple different sort of segments. So there's three sort of sections of the book. There's Michaelmas term, maybe, Lent term, and summer term. So those are the three sections of the book, and so like Michaelmas, Rose is sort of trying to figure everything out. Lent is when stuff really gets serious, and then summer is like leading to your climax and the end of the book. And then also Rose is a classics professor. So not only are we having these like 3 term separations, so you're really getting into that sort of like academic environment, but you're also getting the lessons that Rose is teaching throughout the story. She teaches about classic women, basically. So some of them are historical figures like Alyssa or Dido of Carthage and Boudica, and others are your more mythological figures like Daphne and Medusa. And so whenever she starts off with this lesson for the girls, part of the stories of these classical women is going to be mirrored in the story, which I love that setup. I love the sort of like meta-ness of it. And I was also really excited for it because I was like when it first started reading it, I was like, I wonder if this author has a background in classics. Turns out she does. She taught it for like 7 years, which I will get. I was so frustrated because it was fine. It was all totally fine until we got to Boudica. And I will like elaborate a little bit more in the spoiler section, but basically the lesson that they taught for Boudica, there was like a factual inaccuracy and I was really confused. And the only reason I caught it is because I spent basically like a year and a half studying Boudica. Like pretty much Everything that has ever been written about this lady, I feel like I've read, which isn't hard because there's like 2 historical accounts. You have Tacitus and you have Cassius Dio. That's it. Those are the 2 historical accounts that we have for Boudica. But I found this like factual inaccuracy in like the, you know, like 3-paragraph lesson on it. I was like, what the heck? That's not that hard to fact check. And so it just really threw me off and sort of, I would say sort of like not destroyed my enjoyment of the book, but significantly tarnished my enjoyment of the book, because I was just really confused how this kind of got passed when the author has a background in classics. And I I was listening to it on an audiobook and I like re-listened to it like multiple times to make sure I heard correctly. And then I like fact checked myself, like, okay, am I remembering this right? Because maybe I'm remembering the story wrong, but it wasn't. So like I said, we'll get to that more in the spoiler section, but it just really threw me off. And it made me wonder, like, okay, well, if I caught this in Boudica, which I know really well, like, what about the stories that I don't know as well? Like, is there some sort of factual inaccuracy that was twisted, like, to further the plot in, like, Dido of Carthage? I don't know, because I don't know that story very well, but it just sort of made me question everything. And I don't mind as much with the myths, because myths have been told by so many different people over so many different centuries. It's not that it doesn't matter, but the stories themselves have shifted so much. And like, all you have to do is like look up a different author or different like classical author who wrote about the same mythological character, and you'll find like 3 different accounts. Which, to be fair, some of that is also the case in historical accounts, but I give more leeway with sort of messing with myths and stuff than I do with historical accounts. I'm like, if you're gonna shift something, shift that. Don't shift the history. You know, or at least like let me know specifically when you do that. But like, it wasn't, as far as I know, there wasn't anything like that in the author's note that said I specifically changed this part of the historical account to fit that. But because it was presented in the form of a teacher teaching a classics lesson to her students, that made me even more mad. I don't know, I was just very confused. It seemed like a weird thing to like have happen. Whatever. Alright, so I'm going to be using my Disney Frozen 2 palette, Elsa, because it has this nice blue shade, which seemed very 90s. That was kind of my main gripe with the book, was just that like factual inaccuracy. And then I didn't appreciate the ending so much. And that was mainly because I didn't feel like it was really well earned. It seemed like a little abrupt, and like what it was building to didn't match what they did with the ending. What I kind of wish had happened is if we had one more section of summer term, or even like one more section of Lent term, like to sort of really utilize that climax and make it feel like the end was worth it and paid off. Or maybe just spend more time on the climax, because it was really like just a couple chapters and then it was like the story's done and it's like, wait, what? That was like my main qualm, and especially because like a couple of the characters that it's been really building didn't feel like they got a good sort of satisfying ending or resolution to the arcs. It was just sort of like cut off, and I don't know, it just felt like a very weird conclusion. I did like the atmosphere. I will say, if you are an atmospheric reader, if you just love the dark academia thriller vibes, you love the sort of gaslighting, unraveling sort of story, like the character sort of kind of wondering if they're going a little crazy, losing their mind a little bit, be like the blackmailing and everything, you're probably going to love this book. And I know that like my opinions of saying, I had some problems with it. I had some things I liked about it. Like, I feel like I've seen a lot more positive reviews than negative reviews. So I would say, especially if you're an atmospheric reader, I would err on the side of you would probably enjoy this. I did really enjoy, like I said, for the most part, really enjoy the setup of having the classics lessons and the school terms sort of frame and outline the plot of the book. I really appreciate that literary device. It was well done. I liked the writing style. So like I said, from like a mood and atmospheric perspective, this book was lovely. I sincerely appreciate it. I thought it was very well executed. So let's talk about Rose just a little bit. So Rose basically, like I said, she's the first new hire, and I really liked her as a protagonist because like her father was a professor, so she went into academia because of her father. So while she went into academia because of her father, she also has like a very feminist mother who's sick. And so a lot of her primary motivation in this book, and a lot of the reasons why this stuff works on her, the blackmailing, the gaslighting, and all this stuff, is because of her concern and love for her mother who's still living. And she also has like some stuff in her past that, you know, kind of can be used against her just a little bit. But you do also know that there's like this background in being very feminist and very sort of, not fight the power, but almost, where that's what she's been raised in. She's been raised in that sort of, that girl power sort of mode. And so she's finding a lot of these more classical sort of sexist ingrained academic institution standards and realizing that they're a lot more ingrained than she thought they were. Like she sort of views academia as like this freedom. There it's like not used in the same way as she was raised to believe it should be, which is about as much as I can say without, you know, spoiling. So I'm trying to debate if I want to like make this a little smoky. I'm very tempted. Maybe a little bit, and see if I absolutely hate myself for making this decision. I do think Rose is a very good character to have as your protagonist to follow throughout her sort of discovery of what Kelvin Grey is actually all about, because all she knows really is that the locals don't appreciate the school, but it's considered like the elite female boarding school. There is no other. So she comes up from Kent and she's like kind of surprised she's a hire, but she finds out the person at her previous place of employment, she's a very young teacher. She's like by decades the youngest teacher at the school. But someone at her previous place of employment recommended her, and all of a sudden she's in this world. Like, she's just a very interesting character, and I like that you can see the classics background, the teaching background sort of come through in the book, the way she cares about all of her students. And you do get to know some of the students, so I liked them. I wish they had been fleshed out a little bit more, like just had a little bit more time. Like they were almost there, just like not quite for me personally. Because like Rose, you understand her so well, she's so well fleshed out, but then like the girls, the students are just like slightly short of well-rounded for me. I would say pretty much the same thing with Antony and Frances, who are fellow teachers at Calvin Grey with Rose. I think they were more fleshed out than the girls or any of the students. However, I think they still didn't quite reach the level I wanted them to reach. I think the plot and the atmosphere is a real strength for this writer, but I think that there could be slightly more done in the character department for me. And because I'm a heavy character reader, I just needed that like extra little boost. Like it wasn't by any means bad. It was just, I needed just a little bit more. One that I think is interesting as far as students go is Bethany, who's, I would say, this very mysterious character, especially towards the beginning of the book. Because like at the beginning of the book is where all of the mystery is, and Bethany seems to sort of be, I would say, at the center of the mystery. And so she's sort of the key, especially like up until about like halfway through the book. She is sort of like the key to unlocking like what is happening at Calvin Grey. And then it sort of shifts gears a little bit, and then there's like other ways that you're sort of trying to find out what's happening here. I am going to say, because this look is dramatic, it would probably not be what a professor would be wearing. But you know, I didn't go to a private all-girls English boarding school in the 90s, so I can't say. Maybe there was some fashion-forward professor like Rose who was just like, you know what, I am going to do very dramatic, colorful makeup today. What are they gonna do? Fire me? Okay, so let's get into the sort of spoiler section, because that's where I'm going to be able to talk more about the things I really liked and the things I really didn't. It's Calvin Bray, not Calvin Grey. Forgot that. We love it when we say the name of the school wrong. See, this is like the downside to audiobook listening. You have no idea how things are spelled, and like I couldn't quite understand what she was saying either. So I was like, it's either Calvin Bray or Calvin Gray. So I like looked up an interview with the author and I wrote it correctly in my review, but I didn't realize I still had the misspelling in my original notes that I was just like that I was looking at just now. So no, there's that. It's Calvin Bray. Calvin Bray. That was your warning. From this point forward, there will be spoilers ahead. So if you don't want any spoilers for this book, and I tend not to go super heavy on the spoilers, I try not to give away major plot twists, but to discuss the plot, I will have to at least discuss like the main sort of like what's going on at Calvin Bray sort of plot twist. But if you don't want some of the smaller ones, I'm probably not going to talk super in-depth detailed, but I at least need to do a little bit of spoiling in order to talk about what I appreciated and didn't appreciate about the book. If you want to skip that, there are timestamps and the time cards down below, so you will be able to skip to my final look and thoughts. If you don't care about spoilers at all, stick around and I will keep doing my makeup and we'll keep talking about this book. And yes, we will get to the factual inaccuracies so I can rant for 5 minutes about Boudica. This is what none of you are here for, but dagnabbit, I'm gonna talk about it. That's not the first thing I'm gonna mention though. So just right off the bat, I'm just gonna say what's happening at Calvin Bray. So basically at this all-girls school is that the girls are basically being trained from age 11 until they're like 17 how to be like the perfect wives. And I don't just mean like they're being trained to be wives. I mean like they're going to be like chosen, auctioned off, whatever you want to call it, is happening. So Rose sort of realizes that this is not, you know, like at Calvin Bray, it's not at all about the institution. It's not at all about the education. It's about getting these girls a high status husband and getting these husbands high status wives. Which, I mean, I have a feeling that you will probably catch on way before Rose does. Just right off the bat, that's my analysis for you. You will catch on faster than she does. Especially because, like, these aren't subtle hints at all. They're not heavy-handed, but they're not, like, it's not hidden. Rose just really doesn't want to believe what's going on. Now, there were a couple things where I was just like, dang, I wasn't quite expecting this book to go that far, but so there were a couple moments where it was either, like, a little clunky, a little heavy-handed, or just like, okay, you went there, got it. Cool. That, it is what it is. But for the most part, I think it was handled very well, and Rose's horror, like I said, the atmosphere of this book is really good. So Rose's horror is your horror. You will be horrified at the things they teach these girls, the things they make them do, how they really truly have no autonomy over their lives. And this is like very much a, well, sort of an open secret in like the England elite. It's not a secret to the girls, it's not a secret to the parents, to the institution. Pretty much it's just a secret from Rose. So, like, anyone who's not in like this sort of like elite society is not going to know what's happening. And when they have a new hire at the school, they basically have like a probationary period, which is like normal for an academic, but for this school, it means they have a probationary period until they tell you everything that's happening at Calvin Bray. And after you know, you can't really leave. And like the plus side to the school, if you want to call it that, is that they are very insular. They take care of everything. So Rose's mother is sent to a new hospital, and so her, I believe it's MS, is being cared for. Like, she's got top doctors. But then when Rose is not down with what they're selling, all of a sudden the fact that they have so much power and so much influence means that they can really hurt whoever they want. They can absolutely blackmail you into staying, and Rose realizes that it's not just that Calvin Bray is so good when no one ever leaves. Like, that's not the real kicker, really. Like, once you're in, you can't leave because They don't want you to talk about what's going on behind closed doors. Another thing that should be mentioned, a certain aspect of it, like, left a weird taste in my mouth. Basically, there's a group, like, they're trying out a diversity thing. So basically they have a group of Japanese girls that are brought in that are also trained, but these girls are not considered as wanted or as good as the white girls, basically. But that's pretty much the extent of the diversity in the school. And this is a program they're trying out. So yeah, it'll give you a very icky taste. But then you also realize some of the stuff that they're doing with these girls, like, and it gets very disturbing. I should, and I'll probably say it again at the end for the people who aren't here for the spoiler section, but there's a decent amount of trigger warnings or content warnings for this book. There's suicide, obviously misogyny, we've talked about that. There's an adult-minor relationship, there's blackmail, bullying, child death, teacher-student relationship, abortion, quite a bit of racism, and, like, overt sort of sexualization and fetishization, I should say, of, like, young girls, specifically of the Japanese girls. They were very much, I would say, fairly fetishized in the book. And, like, you knew it was from the perspective of, like, the higher-ups in the school, so it's not really, like, this is the author's opinion, because obviously it's, like, kind of trying to combat that. And it's just, like, it will leave you feeling very, very icky. There was this one section, like, after you've sort of figured out, like, all of the terrible stuff that's going on, and Rose has sort of realized that the Japanese girls are not considered as wanted or as valuable as the white girls. But there's this section where they have, like, the Japanese girls, like, basically doing, like, I think they said a geisha tea ceremony, and, like, they're teaching the English students how to do this tea ceremony, like, how to be geishas, basically. And that was just a really weird thing to input, because, I don't know, that's what left me with the icky feeling, because, and not because I was, you know, obviously still feeling horrified about what they were making these girls do, but because it sort of felt like it was just stuck into the plot to, like, add to the feeling of horror, which it was, but in a way that sort of didn't understand at all what being a geisha actually entails. Because, like, you have to go through years and years and years of training to, like, know how to properly do, like, geisha ceremonies and everything. So, and these girls are, again, between the ages of, like, 11 and 17. And, like, in the 90s, like, I'm pretty sure, because I looked this up, and to be fair, when I studied it, it was a while back. Like, the amount of training you have to go through to, like, know how to do this stuff properly is, like, it's no small matter. It's literal years of training in order to become an actual geisha, and in order to do this, like, in order to do that performance correctly. And it's not, like, it always bothers me how sexualized it is, and, like, it felt like that section of the book sort of contributed to that, like, viewed it as this very, like, sort of erotic sexual thing, when, like, that's very much a westernized misinterpretation of what geishas actually do and what their performances actually look like. I don't know, it was just, the way it was written, again, left me with a very icky feeling. Like, it was, yeah, it was just, it's hard for me to, like, exactly describe how it made me uncomfortable, but just knowing even the little bit I do know about the culture and work that goes into and surrounds, like, becoming a geisha, just that section really just hit wrong for me. Like, it felt like westernized cultural appropriation to add to the horror of what's already going on, and I understood what she was trying to do. I think it just missed the mark. And, you know, maybe I'm totally off base, but that was what I felt when I read it. So I will just leave that there. So one thing that I want to sort of talk about that I thought was kind of frustrating, like I get, it made sense for the character. It made sense for Rose. But I sort of got the feeling that I was always supposed to agree with how Rose handled situations. Or at least was always supposed to understand, like, or at least semi-agree with how she handled situations. One thing I didn't appreciate was all of these girls really grow up in this trauma. That's all they're exposed to. And they don't know anything else. And I'm talking about the teachers too, because a lot of the teachers are actually from they went to Caldembray as students. Because basically if you are a lower class student, or not lower class, but like you're not a top student. If you were a bottom student, you may not be able to match with a suitor. You may not get a desirable husband. You either will end up getting like a very old husband or like an undesirable husband who chooses you, or you can become a teacher. Those are at Caldembray. Those are pretty much your two options. And so a lot of these teachers, they have been at Caldembray. They have had Caldembray ingrained into them since they were literal like 10 and 11-year-olds. And especially like you learn, one of the things is you learn that Frances was a Caldembray girl. And Frances is like this is Rose's like friend in the story. So this is Rose's friend. This is Rose's like Rose learns that her friend went through this. And Rose, once she learns everything that's going on, she obviously wants to fight back. She's like, my mom was a feminist. This is totally wrong, which it is. It's totally wrong. I'm gonna fight back. So she does. But then she doesn't at all empathize or understand with the fact that Frances is fully traumatized and in learned helplessness. Like, she's like, no, I've been like, there is no escape. Like, she is a victim, and Rose treats her like she has the agency and she has the ability to get out, when all her life she's been beaten down and told that she can't. The way that Rose reacts to these people in the story that have clearly suffered from trauma and learned helplessness, like this is all they know in their entire lives, and they have zero hope, and the way she just sort of like browbeats them and like victim blames them for not immediately going full gung-ho, let's fight the system, it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm like, it makes sense for the character, but again, I got the feeling that I was supposed to like always root for the character. Like, you know how when you read a book and you can tell, like, there's just a feeling you get. It's not necessarily explicitly stated that you're always supposed to root exactly with the character, but you know that that's what the aim is. You are always supposed to think this character is in the right, this character is doing the right thing, or even if they do the wrong thing, they're doing it for the right reasons. And so I got the feeling that I was supposed to agree with Rose, that like Frances or these other characters that are really, really, truly victims and traumatized, I'm supposed to agree with Rose that they made the wrong choice. I'm supposed to agree with Rose that these characters are sort of cowards for not fighting back in the exact same way that Rose wants them to fight back, and that really annoyed me. I'm like, no, like you can't expect a victim of trauma like this, of long-term complex trauma, to immediately just like overcome all of their trauma because you pointed out something and fight back. I don't know, it just, like I said, it really rubbed me the wrong way. But like, and it was so weird because she would say, this person is a victim of an oppressive system, and then she would still low-key victim blame them, and it was, I don't know, it was just really, really weird. Like, they had realistic limitations and a lack of hope and like this ingrained fear of their oppressors. They really truly thought, especially Frances, that there was absolutely zero hope for them. They're like, there is no way to escape the situation. There is no way that I get out of this. And yeah, that again just really sort of bothered me. And maybe the author doesn't want you to always agree with Rose. Maybe she wants you to think, hey, Rose really, this part of the book was not it. Like, yes, she was good in that she wanted to fight for the students, to like give them their autonomy back, but she didn't handle the stuff with Frances well at all. But I kind of have a feeling that's not the case. Just a feeling. Just a bit. I think the book does a very good job of building suspense and anxiety because, like, you start to feel as trapped and horrified with the real situation as Rose does as it all unfolds. Like I said, the atmosphere in this book, 10 out of 10. They did a great job. I will fully state that. Like, the way the suspense builds, even if I don't think the ending or the payoff was quite the best in my book, I think that the build up to it and the build of the tension, extremely well done. The three girls that you get to know the best are Daisy, Nessa, and Freddie. And like I said, I do wish there was a little bit more development to them, like just a tad, because like I had the potential to absolutely adore them. Like, and it just seemed like it fell ever so slightly short for me to like truly love them or them to truly feel like really developed characters, because like these are the girls that Rose is fighting for. Like, it's these students that she really gets close to, connects to, really loves. And at first I didn't even realize that they were going to be important characters. Like, it just seemed like they were part of like the cast of students that Rose was sort of like connecting with. I didn't realize until later on that, oh, these are actual important characters I'm supposed to be paying attention to. So I think maybe there just needed to be slightly more earlier on that really developed and built them, and that really like gave you a hint that these aren't just students, they're like characters that you really need to pay attention to. Like, that happened with like the teachers. Like, there's other teachers that you talk to, but you know early on that Antony and Frances are the two fellow teachers that you're going to be paying attention to, that really matter in the story. But I just didn't feel like it was quite that same level of attention paid with Nessa, Daisy, and Freddie. Overall, Rose was the only character I was really truly invested in. I was invested in Frances probably the next most. Antony's an interesting one because ish happens with Antony, and I went from like liking him, I was like, I like him but I don't trust him, to, oh, I hate him. I hate him. Ish happens. You'll figure it out. Trust me. It was a bold choice. Okay. So let's get to the Boudica. Let's get to the chase. These factual errors. I feel so bad. I don't know. I still, like, I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I understood it correctly, because I'm like, she's a teacher. She should know better than me. I studied it for a year and a half, but she taught this stuff. Like, I shouldn't. Okay, but I just, like I said, I double checked. I triple checked myself. I know, like, I'm kind of stressed to talk about it because, like, I don't trust myself that I actually caught the factual error. But like I said, I listened to it multiple times to make sure I heard correctly. I, like, triple checked my sources. I was like, no. I know this is right. I know what I read. I know what I spent a year and a half studying. But I was so stressed out. Did I already do my foundation? No, I didn't. I'm good. I did the... So basically, it was stated in the Boudica lesson, and I really wish I had like a physical copy of the book so I could just like read you the quote, but I got it through the library and it's been returned for like a few weeks, and it was on audiobook. But like I said, I listened to it a couple times just so I could like make sure that I was like understanding and comprehending the passage correctly. But the first biggest thing was that, like, if you don't know the story, but just super fast backstory, is she was a 1st century queen in Britannia, which is, you know, modern day England. And she basically rebelled against the Romans. She sacked 3 cities. She sacked Camulodunum, Londinium, and Verulamium. And Camulodunum was basically like the Roman capital-ish in Britain. That's what I describe it. It was like the biggest city. So she sacked all of them. And the reason that she did this was basically after, like, kind of complicated and accounts vary ever so slightly between Tacitus and Dio. Like, her husband, Prasutagus, who was the king of the Iceni tribe, I've also heard it pronounced Iceni. Basically, he died, and he had willed half of his land and kingdom to the emperor, who at the time was Nero, and had willed the rest to his 2 daughters. We don't know the daughters' names. like, Tacitus is the only one who mentions the daughter. Dio kind of attributes a variety of other factors after the deaths of Protutagus to why the rebellion actually took place. Needless to say, crap happened, and it ended with Boudica being flogged and beaten, and she was forced to watch while the Romans raped her 2 daughters. Which even Tacitus is like, yeah, that was messed up. Like, he was not a fan of how this was handled. And Tacitus is, by the way, like, the most reliable source because it's actually in his, text, the Agricola, which is literally the account of his father-in-law, Agricola, who was actually there during all of this. Not necessarily, he wasn't necessarily there while Boudica was being, like, flogged and, like, while the instigating attack happened. He was more likely with the governor Paulinus, who was attacking the Druids who were on the Isle of Mona, which is sort of off the coast of Wales, which, like I said, was part of the reason why Boudica was able to, like, gather all of these forces, rebel. She gathered not only her entire tribe, but she also joined forces with the Trinovantes, who were another tribe who had their own reasons to hate the Romans, and then they, like, sacked all these cities, and Paulinus hears about it, and he, like, beats it back. Basically, the factual account of the account that we have of what happened is of the Battle of Watling Street, which was sort of Boudica's last stand. But it shouldn't have been her last stand because, granted, this is a gross overestimation. And all the historians I've read basically said, yeah, this is an overestimation, but it's stated 200,000 soldiers, and then I believe it was stated that, like, Paulinus had 2,000? 10,000? Something like that. Either way, drastically outnumbered by Boudica's forces. Paulinus wins because he out-strategized Boudica, which was how they kind of overtook Britannia in the first place, because everything we know about, like, how the early Celts fought in the 1st century, it's basically described as, like, guerrilla warfare. So it was unorganized, they were, like, masters of chariots, it was a lot. But they were, like, masters on chariots, and the Romans weren't. So, like, it was technically good in, like, kind of, like, these one-on-one, like, surprise situations. But, like, what the Romans were really good at is strategizing. Like, that was, like, what they're good at, and the reason why they were able to, like, sort of continually beat the Celts. So basically what Paulinus did is he funneled the forces. So he found a place that was sort of enclosed on 3 sides, and Boudica's rebels would only be able to enter from one funneled location. And in that scenario, the Romans were going to win every time because they were far more organized, they were highly trained, and they were able to basically completely wipe out Boudica's forces, in addition to the fact that from what we know, it was pretty common for Celtic forces to sort of bring, like, wagon trains along, because, like, you know, warfare wasn't just, like, a men's thing, it was, like, an entire tribal clan sort of thing, like, everyone came along, so, like, all of these wagons that were, like, perched along the sides actually sort of served to him and the forces and make them even more vulnerable. Like, once they realized they were trapped, no one was able to escape. And then, so basically, all of that to say, the lesson stated that the Romans managed to outnumber Boudica's forces, and I was like, no, because neither Tacitus nor Dio states that. Both of them stated that Paulinus was grossly outnumbered and literally only managed to win because he out-strategized Boudica's forces. And so that was just, like, a really weird thing to miss, because it's exactly the opposite of what happened, and I don't understand why you would shift that. I don't. It didn't make any sense to me, and it seemed like a very weird thing to get wrong. And then the other thing was, it also mentioned in the lesson in the book that Boudica killed her daughters and then herself after the battle. But we actually have no true historical certainty or knowledge of what happened to the daughters after the battle. So Tacitus doesn't mention them, like, at all after saying that they rode into battle with their mother. And then Dio literally never mentions them at all. Like I said, he attributed the reasons for Boudica's rebellion to kind of like financial tax loan reasons. It was interesting. But like I said, we consider Tacitus the more reliable source, especially because of the like amount of time that was between when Dio wrote and when Tacitus wrote in comparison to like when the actual event took place. And then the two historians, so there's absolutely no proof that Boudica killed her daughters at all. Like, that would just be a theory. Which, I mean, it might be a decent theory, but there's no proof that she did that. And so just stating with certainty that Boudica killed her daughters and then herself is just weird and wrong. What would have been better is that it's theorized that Boudica killed her daughters and then herself, because then I wouldn't have an issue with it, because yeah, you could say that as a theory. It should also be noted that the two historians also disagree on Boudica's death in general. Dio says she fell sick and died after the battle, which is kind of interpreted to mean she died of her injuries after the battle. And then Tacitus states that she poisoned herself. Basically, when it comes to the end of Boudica's story, we know that it probably ended tragically no matter what, but we don't know exactly how it ended, and even the primary sources don't agree on what happened. So it just seemed like a very weird thing to state with certainty that this is what happened when we have no certainty about what happens. And that annoys me a lot in historical accounts, to state that we know that something happened with certainty, especially when you go that far back. There's basically no certainty. There's almost always going to be conflicting sources. And then you have to like come from the perspective that, hey, the only two primary sources we have were written by the literal enemies of the Celts. Like, you know, histories written by the winners. Yeah, this is literally history written by the winners. So when they talk about the Celts, you also have to like come at it with a grain of salt. Like, hey, this is written by the people who beat them. So, I mean, all that to say, it felt really weird. It just bothered me, particularly because it was a historical account. I would understand if it was edited more like the mythological figures, you know? You probably didn't care at all that I went into this long rant about Boudica, but I just needed to talk about it. And it just, like I said, it like left me with a weird taste. That was something that was like just stated as a lesson. Pretty close to the end here. Like I said, the ending, it's a very abrupt ending, and I just didn't feel like it was executed in the manner that I wanted it to be. I just didn't feel like it was executed in a great way. It just felt a little bit too abrupt. Like the way that Wynne builds the tensions in this book, great, amazing, lovely. But then the ending didn't feel worth it. Like, it didn't feel like it had built up correctly, almost. Not me breaking my lip liner. No, wait, I have to finish lining my lips. Okay, I can do it. This is fine. Train wreck right at the end. Just like this book. We're covering it up with lipstick anyway, right? So I'm obviously not gonna talk while I do my lipstick, so 1 second. Is everything just breaking on me today? I'm on the struggle bus, it's fine. Okay, I'm just gonna put it down toward the bottom so it won't slip out. It's fine. Okay, I'm trying to decide lip gloss or no lip gloss. I think I'm gonna put like a little bit on the outer, just on the inside. Okay, nice. I like that. Oh, and then you know, powdering my face after I do my lipstick. Very, very smart, Callista. Very, very smart. Oh gosh. But yeah, I didn't quite feel the ending, especially with how it was built up, like for characters like Francis and Antony. Like, I don't know, it just felt like it was too abrupt for how well the tension and everything was built in the rest of the book, you know? It just wasn't up to par with the rest of the novel. So, I mean, which obviously that's my own personal opinion, maybe you read it and absolutely loved it. I feel like endings to books are always very like personal and controversial. Like, it's easy to nitpick with an ending, honestly. So I'm not gonna be too harsh on that specifically. All right, and then setting spray. All right, let's come back for the final look. Am I your cool 90s professor yet? I actually feel like I look more like a schoolgirl trying to be a professor than an actual professor. But you know. I've got like the scrunchie, the look. I feel like I look like I should be on Clueless. Clueless 90s or early 2000s? Fact check that, note to self. Alright, so let's get our academic glasses on and dissect my final thoughts about this book. Okay, wow. So for me, it was kind of an average read. There were things I really enjoyed about it and things that really just didn't sort of work for me at all. As far as things that didn't work, a few of the characters fell a little on the flat side for me. The ending felt kind of abrupt and clunky and I didn't really appreciate it all that much. And then, of course, there was that one factual inaccuracy that just drove me up a wall. Yeah, all of that together just didn't super work for me. But the atmosphere, amazing. It was written very well overall. Like the style, the linguistics, all of that. Overall, I loved the choice to do the structure with your classical female characters as your sort of like checkpoints along the story. I thought that was a really good addition. And I liked the way it sort of framed the entire book and informed the plot. There was just a few too many things that didn't work for me to really, truly love my experience reading it. But I do think it's a decent example of a dark academia thriller, and if that is your vibe, you will probably love this book. And I mean, obviously, these are just my opinions. Not everything I hate, you're gonna hate, and vice versa. So, and especially if you're a more atmospheric-based reader, you don't care quite as much about the characters being super well-rounded. And, you know, like I said, there's a few clunky plot moments, but overall, the plot's pretty well constructed. So if you're more of a plot reader than a character reader, you might like this more. Hard to say. I will say, I said this earlier in the spoiler section, but for those of you who weren't there for the spoiler section, I am going to say there's some pretty heavy content warnings for this book, so I'm just going to list them again real quick. There's a content warning for suicide, heavy content warning for misogyny, there's an adult-minor relationship, a student-teacher relationship, blackmail, bullying, child death, like abortion, there's some racist, not undertones, there's some racist overtones in there. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book that's pretty heavy. It's dealing with a lot of those like academia entrenched sort of educational standards. I mean, like pretty much any problem that you can picture that might happen in academia probably happens in this book. So if you're sensitive to any of that content, oh, and gaslighting is in there. Oh, and gaslighting and victim blaming and long-term complex abuse, alcoholism, stuff like that. So that's basically my thoughts on this book. I think it's good. It just wasn't a perfect fit for me. By the way, I am going to be including like the Boudica sources that I talked about, so Tacitus and Dio, and just some other interesting reads, because honestly she is a super fascinating historical figure and I think it'd be cool if people knew more about her. So I mean, feel free to check those out down below if you would like. Hi Aria. I'd say hi, but you would probably just like scratch me. She looks super cute right now. Hold on, let me take a picture and then I'll like input it.
Who looks super cute right now? Who looks super cute right now? Yeah, is it you? Are you super cute right now? Yeah? Aria, sit. Sit. Who's the absolute cutest? Yeah, that's you. Good girl. Good girl.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't personally necessarily avidly recommend it, but if it sounds like it fits your niche or your reading style, then go ahead and read it. If you've already read it and have very different opinions to me, because I think I'm in the minority of not absolutely loving it, feel free to let me know what your thoughts were down below. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day. Stay magic, keep reading, and I love you all so much. Goodbye!